Okay, so welcome everybody, and this is a hothouse group. We are a free group, a resource hub for residential interior designers. Um, so this year, month by month, we've been looking at the key business performance elements of design practice that you really have to get good at in order to have a successful business. And I call them the entrepreneurial pillars of design practice. So we started off, we did business planning in January, we did founder presence in February, we did marketing in March, and we are now in April and we're doing sales and client acquisition. All the previous videos are on my YouTube channel, so you can go back and watch all of the previous stuff, plus a load of stuff from last year as well. And in fact, I'm going to be referencing some of the lectures or webinars that we did last year. And we're going to be continuing with a different theme each month. Next up, I'm going to have a month off myself in May, but we'll have someone coming in to do a guest appearance. And then I'm back in June to do operations, systems and processes, which is a really sort of hefty, practical unit. And then we've got financial literacy coming up later in the year, along with design excellence. So the client experience of your design output. So we've got all of that to come later on in the year. But for now, we're talking about sales and client acquisition. So I have a presentation that I'm going to share. Let's get that up. And Holly, could you give me a thumbs up if you can see that presentation? Thank you. That's super. And I'll just do a little bit of fiddling here. Okay. So this is the first of two webinars. The second one is in 2 weeks' time in the afternoon rather than the morning. And the way that I have broken this down is this first one is more the sort of psychological well-being of the designer to participate in the sales process. So it's about how we mentally prepare ourselves to sell to our clients. The second one is much more about the practical manifestation of sales within our business processes. So next time we're going to look at how you set your business up for selling. This one is more how you set yourself up for selling. So just a quick mention that last year I ran 2 webinars that should be pulled in with the 2 that I'm about to run this year. Last year, we looked at sales training for interior designers, and we looked at the psychology of ultra high net worth clients. Last year's webinars were very much more from the perspective of the client psychology. This year, I'm thinking more about the designer's psychology, but there was a lot of, I think, quite rich material in these 2 webinars, and they are both on my YouTube channel if you want to go back and watch them again. So last year we talked about what we need to be, what our clients need from us in terms of the excellence of our sales performance. And we spoke about, Savile Row type tailoring or French and Italian luxury. We talked about working in partnership with your client rather than seeing yourself as being sort of, sometimes within interior design practice, it can feel like we're actually in a battle against our clients because what's in their interest is not necessarily in our interest. But when you move on up to a higher level of design practice, you find yourself on the same side as the client. So I spoke about the designer being the consigliere, the client's trusted advisor. So that was last year's material. It was philosophical at the level of belief. This year, today, we have the first of our 2 webinars on sales and client acquisition. It's more theoretical. It's about who you are in the room and why it matters. And then in 2 weeks' time, we're doing the practical side. So what your practice does, in what order, and what good looks like at each stage of the process. So today we are going to be thinking about high stakes moments, because selling can feel high stakes at the level of our nervous system. So it's much more about the psychology of the designer. And I've been recently reading up and dipping into elite sports psychology, because I feel like there's an awful lot we can pull from sports psychology that can help us when we're in the room with our clients. So the agenda for today, a quick welcome. We're thinking about the market at the moment. We'll take a quick look at what selling actually is. And then I have a number of different theories to talk through with you. And most of them relate to mindset and psychology. So we have self-efficacy. I want to talk to you about what's appropriate for businesses at different stages of development. And I want to talk about progressive commitment. I want to talk about a scarcity mindset, the 6 principles of the inner game, the fact that we're selling to our clients' hearts, and then whether we are, I want to make a distinction between marketing and sales, and then I'm just going to do a quick trailer for webinar 2. So most of you I know, my background is high-end residential interior design. I started my career with Henrietta Spencer Churchill. I worked for her for 2 years. The image on the screen is a project I worked on for her. The client was a billionaire, so it was an almost different type of design practice. And subsequently, after I left Henrietta, I went and set up my own practice, and I built that up from working with very small clients to working back again with the high net worth individuals. So I've been through the entire process of selling, from the very smallest packages right the way up to the biggest design, full service design, full sort of turnkey design services. So before we begin, a quick introduction to where the market is at the moment. Now, I know a lot of designers that I work with are finding the market quite quiet at the moment. There's an awful lot going on economically, politically. It's a slightly, well, I guess people are feeling risk averse. They want to be cautious, and that is having an effect on interior design practice. The problem with this, and I have to say, this isn't universal. There are designers I work with who I feel are responding in the most modern way to the needs of interior design practice. Their marketing is absolutely up to date. The way they run their businesses is at the most sort of contemporary level. They have very strong values. They are well established. They've been working on getting the power into their websites, which is ultimately what's going to power your business. And those designers seem to be doing fine, but I am hearing from other people that the market is challenging. And the problem with a challenging market is it puts us on edge, and it makes us feel like there's more at stake. We feel more anxious about the presentation. You know, there's more to lose because we can't rely on another client necessarily coming through. So the market feels less than optimal right now, and that can have an effect. That can actually exaggerate some of the worst feelings that we have about selling when we're dealing with our clients. So if I say to you, if I ask you, what is selling? What is sales? I know if I'm asked that question, I have a horrible response to it. It feels to me like selling is persuading somebody to buy something that they don't want or need. That's what selling, you know, at its worst, at my worst instinct is to think that that's what selling is. However, we need to change our perspective on this. Selling is the natural conclusion of a relationship that's built on a genuine understanding. So I want to change the way you think about this so that you see this as a process that you embark on with a client. The client needs your help. You provide a wonderful service. You take them through your wonderful service, and things are bought. Your time is bought, products are bought, but it doesn't have that sense of persuasion. It doesn't necessarily have that sense of imposition. It is just a natural part of this business process. In my previous webinars on high net worth, selling to high net worth individuals, I spoke about the emotional journey that you go on with your clients. So first they become aware of you, that's presence. Attunement, they feel like they have a connection. Emotional safety, they're beginning to see you as somebody that they can speak to. They develop trust. You make them feel significant. You make them realize that you can manifest the identity they want the world to see, and ultimately that leads to loyalty. So this is the process that we go on with our clients. So we need to have belief in our own capacity, in terms of we need to truly believe in what it is we're doing for our clients, because that is one of the strongest predictors of your performance. The greater your self-belief, the more likely it is that you'll perform well when you're dealing with your clients. It's more reliable than skill, it's more durable than motivation. So this belief in what you do and what you supply needs to become bulletproof. So this is something that we need to work to do, is to develop this belief. So I have here on the screen some of the things that we do for our clients that can lead us to really value our services, that can lead us to have this belief in our self-efficacy. We save them time. We eliminate costly mistakes. We give them access to a world that they wouldn't be able to enter without our assistance. We help save them from decision fatigue. We give them a coherence that they wouldn't be able to achieve without us. We translate their dreams into reality. We increase the value of their long-term asset. We help manage what are very complex transitions. We give them the lived experience of a wonderful home when it's finished, and it has a life beyond the point at which we deliver in as a gift to the future inhabitants of this space. So I think it's worth taking time to convince yourself entirely of the value of what you are doing. It has enormous value, and we need to really feel this in order to be able to present this to our clients. Now, the extent of which you are able to do this varies, and it depends on how recently you have established your business, how much experience you have. And I break interior design practitioners down into 4 tiers, and I call tier 1 startup, tier 2 growing pains, tier 3 maturity, and tier 4 is stardom. Okay, so startup is obvious. You know, it's the point at which you decide to launch your business, and it's probably the first year of that business. Tier 2 is going to be year 2, year 3, when you start to feel some irritations with the way that you've launched. You know that there are better ways of doing things, and you start doing the hard work of improving your business so that it has longevity, so that it goes on to become a successful business. Tier 3 are those successful businesses, the ones that have had most of the cranky bits knocked out of them. They're in good shape, they're delivering well, they're making good money. And at tier 3 would be a very respectable place to stop, to decide that you don't want any additional stress or any extra responsibilities. You're making a good living. You're going to live your design life in tier 3. Tier 4 is for ambitious designers who really want to take that additional step up to increase the profitability of their business and perhaps become an industry figurehead. So somebody who has a higher profile within the industry and is attracting perhaps more affluent clients as a result. So those are our tiers. And the reason I bring them up here is that I want to talk to you about how well you can manage your clients' expectations through the selling process. And I have to say, this gets easier the more advanced your business is. So I'm going to come back to this, but ultimately, you're not stuck in tier one, you're not stuck in tier two, you're not stuck in tier three if you choose to move on up. These are just absolutely natural evolutionary steps of your business. And the point is to fix your focus on the next tier that you want to get to and do the work necessary to pull your business up to that next tier. So just going back and looking at the client relationship and sales strategy, if you're in tier one, your business model is service offering based. So it's transactional. You're making transactional agreements with clients. You're saying yes to almost everything, even if those jobs aren't ideal. You're taking lower fees because what you really want to do is build your portfolio. You probably over-explain, over-deliver, and you undervalue yourself, and therefore your boundaries aren't as strong as they need to be. By tier two, you're starting to get a bit hacked off with this. You are still not able to charge the big bucks. You haven't got the reputation or the evidence yet to make that necessarily possible, but you can start to filter your clients. You start to recognize the ones who are going to be good. You start taking steps to make sure that the ones who were slightly time wasting no longer trouble you. But you are still all about the deliverables. You're still basically a service-based industry for your clients. By tier three, it's relationship-based, you're self-assured, you have clearly defined services and pricing, your clients value, and your sales conversations become much easier. And this is the level at which some of the stress and some of the tension starts to come out of those conversations. Your website and branding are filtering your clients. So you're starting to talk publicly, perhaps, about the level of investment that is needed to work with you. And that naturally repels some people. And this is when you get more confident, or perhaps you don't need the business quite so much because you already have a good foundation, and you can start to pre-qualify your clients. Ultimately, at tier four, you are exclusive, you're bespoke. You often have a gatekeeper, so there's somebody who's filtering on your behalf, making sure that only the most optimal clients are getting through to you, and you are operating high trust relationships built through long-term nurturing, reputation, PR, and so on. So this is how we move through our tiers, and this enables us to have a slightly different experience depending on what level you're currently at. The point of all of this is when we're talking about sales, ideally, we're going to get to a position where we're taking our clients through progressive commitment. So our clients have already learned from our public information what they're likely to, how much working with us is likely to cost, how much they need to have to invest in their project, how much, exactly how we're going to work with them. This is information that continues to be delivered through the discovery call. Perhaps we have a glossy document that we send to clients who are interested, something like working with us. And that again restates the conditions on which we will engage with our clients. And then, of course, there's the preliminary meeting. So by the time you get to the point where most designers are thinking about selling, the client is most of the way there. That's the aim. The aim is that by the time we actually are face to face with the client, with a high stakes moment where a proposal is being presented, the client already more or less knows exactly what to expect. The reason I went through all the tiers stuff first is when you are a new business, and I know we've got a couple of new designers here today, when you are a new business, you can't afford to be that fussy up front. And therefore, you'll probably have more of these challenging sales conversations because you can't afford to just be that fussy about who you take on. You need the portfolio images. You need to build your business up, build your reputation, get your testimonials. And all of that means that you have to keep your boundaries, your barriers to business need to be kept lower. So you'll get a different experience of this aspect of selling depending on what level your business is at. Now, a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is about mindset, because mindset is absolutely pivotal. If I could, I think if I could give a designer a magical gift, if I could tap them on the head with a magic wand to give them something that was most likely to make them successful, it would be a good mindset. It would be confidence and a good mindset. It wouldn't be design skills. It wouldn't necessarily be business acumen. It would be a good mindset and confidence, because I've observed what that can do for people. That really is the absolute killer app. I want to talk to you about one particular mindset, which is a scarcity mindset. So the more that we need the work, the less likely we are to get it. Our own self-sabotage steps in and gets in the way. So scarcity mindset is a state of mind that arises because you have less of something than you need. So you are feeling a lack of something, you're in a scarce frame of mind. Your attention narrows to the thing that is scarce, and this is at the cost of almost everything else. So we're so focused, for example, on getting in a fee for a particular project that we cease to see the trees for the woods or the woods for the trees. So scarcity mindset is something that we need to overcome. Now, I wrote about this in the blog last week and in the newsletter. Self-hypnosis can actually help with this. So I have, in my own mind, I have worked this model through in the past. And the concept is, if you imagine that you were awarded a grant and the grant was going to pay 2 years of revenue. So your business was guaranteed, you had a guaranteed income, and it was, everything was golden for the next 2 years. The way that you would approach your meetings with clients would be potentially completely different. You would be thinking about how interested you were in the project and how much you wanted to understand the client and how you would be responding to the client and the very best things that you could find. That would become your entire focus. And a designer with that attitude and that frame of mind is more likely to be able to sell. So the reason I know this is from my own personal experience, building my own business. I know what it's like when times are tough and you're just starting out and you're sitting opposite your client at their kitchen table and you're trying to sell something very small and it all feels incredibly meaningful and, incredibly stressful. That's one side. I also know what it feels like 2 years later to be really fed up of selling at that level and not feeling like you're making any progress and getting to the point where enough is enough. And henceforward, I'm only going to work at this level. And the minute you decide to do that is when everything turns around. So this getting rid of your scarcity mindset and changing the way that you think about your engagements with your clients can be the very thing that helps to make you successful in front of the client and in the moment. So coming from sports psychology, I've taken 6 principles from the inner game, and this is inspired by psychology as used in tennis coaching. So the first of these is process focus. I'm sorry, I'm failing to see what's under the verses there. I can't remember, my apologies. But I know it means focusing on the process and not focusing on the outcome. I think it's outcome focus. Second one is pre-performance routines, then confidence versus competence, arousal regulation, instructional self-talk, and attribution style after setbacks. So these are all principles of psychology applied within sports, and I think they apply to us as well. So process focus versus outcome focus. What I was talking about previously, when you're in the meeting and you're focused on the fee, that is your focus on the outcome. You are all absorbed in the outcome. What we need to be instead is process focused. So if you are outcome focused, the quality of the present moment degrades. There's simply less of your mind available for the actual task because some of it is being consumed by anticipation, hope, or dread. This is when we're focused on the outcome. And the body reads this heightened state as a threat rather than an opportunity, and it responds with physiological changes. So you might get an increase in your heart rate, you might discover that your breathing is shallow, you feel tense, and this has a further sort of compromising effect on your performance. This is when we're focused on the outcome. What we need to be is focused on our process. And of course, our process is taking the brief, curiosity about the client, enjoyment and passion about our trade. This is our process, and this is where the focus needs to be. So ideally, we will make a disconnection between hang-ups about scarcity and focus more on how we are serving our clients and all of the wonderful value that we bring. So we're focused on that. Pre-performance routine. So this is preparation in advance, basically. Now, I know that if I'm well prepared, I don't think, sometimes I go into a client meeting and I think I'm a bit anxious about it. Maybe I've got imposter syndrome. Maybe I think of all the things that might come up that I'm less certain about. But I know that if I have prepared really well in advance, if I've done everything I can think of to prepare, if I've done my research, my analysis, I've got my solutions lined up, I know that I'm ready to present. That preparation, I have never had a meeting go wrong for which I have prepared well in advance. So preparation is going to help us to have a successful sales meeting. Something that I've come to quite recently, but I have found really powerful, is journaling. So actually with a pen, physically writing about my thoughts about things. And I've found that journaling is like a hack in my brain. There's something about the act of physically writing on paper that seems to short circuit and just go straight into the parts of my brain that I want to work with. So if we're thinking about our business and our value and really cherishing all of the ways in which we can satisfy our clients and make their life better, then writing about that can be a way to sort of hack your own mindset and get yourself really well set up for a meeting that you're going to have. So I recommend perhaps an element of journaling ahead of a big sales meeting. Then we have the self-hypnosis that I mentioned earlier. Again, getting ourselves into the right frame of mind to not be so fixated on the financial part, the selling part, and instead to be thinking about the process and the wonderful presentation that we have to make to our client. We can also work with our breath and work with sensory grounding to make ourselves feel physiologically more ready and more able. So, a quick 3-minute exercise where you breathe you breathe in for 4 beats, you hold the breath for 4 beats, you breathe out for 6 beats, and you do that a few times, and then you think about 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can feel, and 1 thing that you can taste. You might find that has a really calming effect on you. And it has an amazing ability to return you to neutral when you're feeling a little bit over the top. So, these physiological little prompts can help us as well. Grooming, making sure that the way that you have presented yourself makes you feel great. I found a lovely term for this writing this presentation. The term is enclothed cognition. It's not something I've come across before, but basically it means that the way that we have presented ourselves is helping us to feel great and to make a great impression on our clients. So that is another part of the pre-performance routine. And then having a single, I've got 3 examples here, but a single intention. So instead of being hung up on something else, as part of our presentation, we have another intention. So an intention, for example, I'm going to find out what this house needs to do for this person's sense of self. So what is it that this client needs this house to do for them to help them feel the best they can feel about themselves? Or I'm going to listen more than I speak. Or I'm going to notice what this client chooses to tell me that I haven't specifically asked them about. So we create a new focus for ourselves and we stop thinking about the thing that might otherwise put us into a disadvantageous frame of mind. Okay, confidence and competence. We've got some KLC graduates here. I used to teach, I was a lecturer at KLC for 17 years. I've sat through, I don't know how many hundreds of client presentations. Some of them I was a studio tutor and I had actually worked with the students in the classroom prior to the presentation. And I have watched students at KLC with the most exquisite presentations get absolutely floored because they're lacking in confidence. And I have seen students who I know had done almost no work spellbind the client because they delivered with such confidence. Okay, confidence, mindset and confidence are the 2 things that you can hack and you can grow intentionally, that are the greatest gifts that you could have commercially as a designer. Now, in the last year, I measure my confidence weekly. So every week, I think on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is bouncing along the bottom and 10 is bulletproof self-belief, where do I feel in terms of my confidence? And I measure it every week. And in the last year, I've been doing it for 65 weeks, I have taken my confidence from a 7 to an 8.5. And I have done that intentionally. And the way that I've done it is by forcing myself to do things that I'm scared of or that I'm not convinced I can do. And when I do them, I find that my confidence grows. So I put myself out my comfort zone. I I don't die. Sometimes I don't win, but I don't die. And that has really grown my confidence. And I've seen the same sort of improvements in mindset as well. So you can change this and it can be a project. And for those of you who are just starting out, if we're talking about, I'm sorry, it takes 2 to 3 years to build a design practice, up to a point where it's returning nicely for you. If you were working on your confidence and your mindset at the same time, you really would be absolutely unbeatable by the time you get to that 3-year period. So thinking about confidence, it's so much more important than competence. I mean, that's not true because if you're incompetent, it will eventually get you. But for the purposes of presenting to your client, confidence is going to win every time. The next thing is arousal regulation, which sounds a bit kinky, but it isn't. It's about how stressed or tense you're feeling at the point of presenting. And there is a Goldilocks zone, and it's different. Some people really like to have a buzz, other people like to be really calm. So you need to figure out where it is you feel most comfortable. And you need to try to work out methods using what I'm talking about to get yourself to the correct level of arousal for you at the point of presenting to your clients. And again, we have the breath work and the sensory grounding, and we have the self-hypnosis that we can bring to the situation to help prepare us for the stakes, for the stakes that are present in the meeting that we're going to be going into. Instructional self-talk. Okay, I hate hearing people beat themselves up. I'm sure you've heard this recommendation that, if you wouldn't say it to a friend, if you wouldn't dream of saying it to a friend, don't dare say it to yourself. Okay, so negative self-talk, not having it. But positive self-talk, you've got this, you can do it, believe in yourself. Similarly, doesn't really have that great an effect because it's wishful thinking. It's not tangible. So we're going to strike that out as well. Instead, what we need is to give ourselves instructions. So instead of pepping ourselves up or dragging ourselves down, we tell ourselves how we're going to perform. We set ourselves tangible goals for our performance in the meeting that we're going into. We give ourselves instructional goals. And I wrote about this last week in my blog when I was writing about Cristiano Ronaldo, when he's up to take a penalty and you see him sort of hypnotizing himself prior to kicking the ball. And what he says is, it's normal for you to score. So he doesn't say you can do it. He doesn't say, let's go or whatever. He normalizes the situation. It is normal for you to score. And he takes some of the tension out of the situation because he's making it about the process that he's trained for rather than the high stakes moment. Okay, attribution style. So I'm just looking for a clock. Attribution style after setback. So this is what we say to ourselves when things have gone wrong. We need to, so in my bootcamp course that I run for experienced designers, we have what we call a blameless self-mortem. And a blameless self-mortem is when we look directly at something that hasn't worked out, we don't flinch, we look at it and we pick it apart and we think about how we could have performed better. But there's no blame. There's no blame. In fact, we congratulate ourselves. We congratulate ourselves for being brave enough to actually look directly at our flaws and our faults. There's no ego there. It's just about improvement. So attribution style, how do you speak to yourself if things don't go well? Do you tell yourself you're not good enough? Or do you think logically that perhaps in this case, it was just a case that the client didn't have the budget? So avoiding, this is another way in which we can be kind to ourselves in terms of how we work with our mindset. Now, when we are selling to our clients, we have to remember, and this is a very key point, that interior design purchases are system 1 decisions that require system 2 permission. So a system 1 decision is a fast decision. It's made based on instinct and emotion. So it can be based on, how compelling the story is that you weave for your client. The client is going to get wrapped up in that, and the client is going to want to go ahead, but they need system 2 permission. System 2 is the logical, practical side of them. So your presentations, your sales pitches to your clients have to contain both system 1 compelling material and system 2 practical, logical, technical strength as well. You have to hit both. Now, I know designers naturally, I think every designer maybe tends more towards the creative or maybe tends more towards the practical. Some are at quite distant ends of the spectrum, the very creative versus the very practical. Regardless of where you are, you need to make sure that you have covered both ends of that spectrum. Your proposal has to speak to both of those systems. So the heart says, please, can I have it? And the head says, yes, this is a safe choice to make. So you need to make sure that regardless of which end of that spectrum you sit at, you've covered both ends of the spectrum in the presentation to the client. So we're getting to the end of today. Today is all about psychological. And next time we're going to be talking about actual processes and systems. But before we end up, I just wanted to say, because last month we were talking about marketing, and this month we're talking about sales. What is the difference? The difference is that your marketing speaks to the whole world. It's going out there to speak to as many people as possible. You want your marketing to speak to many. Sales is a conversation with a single client. Okay, so the marketing is going out to the whole world. Your sales is you've got a live one, and now you are engaged in a direct correspondence with that client. Those are your sales. We need to have both systems up and running. So we need to have marketing up and running, but by the same token, we have to have our sales systems up and running as well. Next time, we're going to look at what those systems and processes actually are, how you build them in your business. You cannot manufacture market interest. You can't magic it up. You have to you have to put some heat under it in order to make it boil. Okay, so your marketing, you have to be at it. You cannot manufacture interest. And with your sales, when you get a live one, you can't afford to waste that prospect. So we have to look after our one-to-one sales, and we have to look after our one-to-many marketing. So that wraps us up for today. We're going to pick up with the actual processes within our business of selling the next time in the next presentation. But I want to ask if anybody has any questions about the presentation so far. I hope that's all come through clearly, because we're currently having our internet replaced, and I hope they haven't cut any cables while I've been talking. So does anybody have any comments, or does anybody want to ask any questions about the presentation today?
Hi, Julia, it's Holly.
Yes, hi,
That
Holly.
was great. I think personally, myself going from a corporate background and having a team and working for a business and then going self-employed, and I've only really done that in the last kind of couple of weeks. It's so different, and it's a very big adjustment, and actually having a community and like having this is really great, and kind of the reminder of all of those different business principles. And I'm very much in that stage one of that table, but I have my first client meeting today, like a bit of a
Okay.
discovery call. So any advice, I feel like I am very much like, a lot of that resonated with me. So I wrote down about that mindset and confidence and the self-talk stuff. I have been trying to nurture that, and I have been practicing that for probably since the beginning of the year. So I have been feeling quite confident, but now that my meeting is in 2 hours time, I'm definitely in that space of a bit more, oh my goodness, I feel really nervous, because to your point, I really want this, and I know that I could do a good job, but it's any advice for that initial meeting would be really helpful from anyone around the table as well.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask the other people here in a minute, because I know that there are some people here with a lot of experience. But my advice to you would be, I think new designers feel a pressure to perform in a discovery meeting. And as an old designer, it wouldn't occur to me to perform in a discovery meeting. For me, a discovery meeting would be finding out about the client.
Yeah.
That's what a discovery meeting is. There's no way that you can begin to deliver any design advice or anything like that. And the whole time I'd be speaking to the client, I'd be thinking, well, I could structure your project like this, or I could structure it like that. And the whole point of this conversation is so that I can go away and think and then come back with some kind of suggestion about how we might work together. So
Yeah.
for me, a discovery meeting is gathering information and then saying to the client, thank you for that. And the gathering of information is genuine curiosity and excitement, excitement about their project, curiosity about them and what they hope to achieve and their background and so on. All of that, um, collecting that information, saying, okay, leave it with me. And I will come back to you with some ideas about how we might work together or what the next step would be. Now, anybody else here? I don't know if our experienced designers, Nicola's mic's not working. Okay. Anyone else here who has a bit more experience who would have recommendations for discovery?
Hi, Julia. My video is not working properly. I would say that also this discovery meeting is working out whether you want to even work with the client. So there's no performance. And often, actually, you'll find that they're trying to charm you into working with them. And they'll be saying all kinds of crazy stuff and making all the right noises. But really, you need to be listening to some out for red flags. So yeah, there's no performance from you. You just be natural and do your thing. And as Julia said, sound curious and thinking about how you're going to process this whole thing, because that's what they're employing you for. So there's no need to perform, I don't think.
Are there any stand things that you've experienced that are like, hey, this is a red flag?
Where do you want to start? Clients that have said they understand the process, they've done it all before. Clients that have said they've sacked their previous interior designer. Everything's just too easy to them. Yeah, they're not genuinely curious about the process and how you're going to structure it and what their role will be. And that's another thing. If they're not curious about your role and their role and how to stay in their role.
Okay. I'm just making notes.
I
Can I
think
just
also
jump in and
if they say,
sorry.
sorry, Jenny, no, go ahead.
I was just going to jump in and say, I think that last point's really valid, actually. I think some of the worst clients are the ones that go, I kind of have most of the information I only need. You have to, it kind of sounds really harsh, but you have to go into it knowing that they're going to respect your process and that you can, and that's not being arrogant, but it's because you do know how to do it. And they're buying into working with you as well as the other way around. And I think to an extent, just having the confidence to know that you can lead them through the process, and if they follow your process, they will get a better outcome because of that. And also, it's not kind of your taste, but you've got experience.
And also, if they start salami slicing processes already, or start asking for discount already, and it's just they obviously at that point don't even respect the process, don't respect your value, that kind of thing. So they should be open to hearing what your process is, how you're going to do it, and letting you come up with the solutions to things rather than butting in and trying to do it themselves.
Okay, so it's definitely worthwhile going through my process in this first discovery call. Yeah. Okay. Right,
and I think also clients who tell you that you're one of 7 designers that they're going to be speaking to. So, why don't you justify yourself? I've got this is a post on my Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
Red flag clients. It's got like 10 different varieties of red flag client.
Okay, I will look that up.
Yeah,
I think
so
my other
you need to be on, you do need to sell, Holly. You do need to tell them how you operate and a bit about yourself, but don't feel like you need to do a song and a dance or anything like that. You're there to gather information.
Oh, I'll put my dance routine to the back on this one then.